Good afternoon, everyone. It is now 2 p.m. Eastern Time, so we'll begin this meeting of the North American Numbering Council. My name is Christy Schumann. I am the designated federal officer of the NANC, and I thank you all for joining us here today. We welcome members joining us here in the room and also on Microsoft Teams. Chairwoman Charles, I now turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's NANC meeting. This is our first NANC meeting of 2025 and the final meeting of the current charter. We are excited to welcome many of our council members to the FCC's headquarters in Washington, D.C. We have some interesting reports and presentations on today's agenda. We'll go and get to them shortly. This meeting is hybrid, both in person at the FCC headquarters and on Microsoft Teams. In addition, we welcome members of the public in person at FCC headquarters and on the live stream. Available on the FCC's website and on YouTube. In the room, we ask members to raise their hands to be recognized to speak. We will have an opportunity for public comments near the end of the meeting. For online viewers, we welcome members of the public watching via live stream and encourage you to submit any questions to the email address livequestions@fcc.gov. Your questions will be read during the public participation portion of the meeting. Before we begin, I will review some ground rules and best practices for council members to ensure we have a successful meeting. Please keep your microphone muted unless you're speaking. For those participating remotely, please only use the video function if you are speaking. If you have a question or comment during the discussions, please use the raise hand feature and please unclick raise hand once you are finished. When you are speaking, please identify yourself, as we may not recognize your voice. And please remember to mute yourself when you are finished speaking. Does anyone have any questions before we proceed? I am now pleased to welcome Brendan Carr, Chairman of the Federal Communications Commission. Mr. Chairman, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you so much. It's wonderful to join you all today. I think like a lot of mistakes, this is hitting you all right after lunch, so hopefully you all can stay fully awake and engaged, not just through my brief opening remarks, but through the entire presentation. At the outset, I want to start by expressing my thanks and appreciation to each and every one of you for your service with Nancy. At the end of the day, obviously, each one of you have very important, very busy day jobs, and you're taking all this on top of the work that you do every day. And so I want to express my own thanks and appreciation to all of you. Good afternoon, Chairwoman, Vice Chairwoman, members of Nancy, and welcome to everybody that's watching online as well. Thank you for inviting me to speak with you today. Today is Nancy's last meeting of the Charter, and Nancy has had a very productive last 2 years. Together, the 4 working groups have produced 14 reports and recommendations for the Council's consideration. Now, like many portions of our communications network, numbering is an issue that all too frequently people just take for granted. They just assume it's going to work without much oversight or thought at all. We assume the 10-digit numbering system will work day in and day out, and that people will always be able to get more numbers when needed. But it takes tremendous amount of work behind the scenes to oversee this complicated system with so many different parties and issues in the mix. Over Nancy's history, its work has been critical, and it's led to a number of important initiatives, such as early number portability back in the 1990s to helping the agency implement the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. It's also been busy helping combat unlawful robocalls, including laying the groundwork and the foundation, if you mix those, it's groundation, we're just going to make that a new word, for the stir-shaken framework that is proving to be successful at helping us combat and crack down on illegal robocalls, particularly or exclusively in the case of the stir shaken on IP networks. The American people have benefited greatly from that work. I'd also like to send my thanks to all members of the council, working group members, the NANC chair and vice chair, working group co-chairs, and of course FCC staff as well, for all the work that you've done and your contributions, particularly during these last 2 years. Your work's been vital in achieving NANC's mission to provide advice and recommendations, reach through consensus that foster efficient and impartial number administration. We're going to be working over the next few months to transition a lot of the NANC's work to the commission itself, to the agency staff in the coming months, and we look forward to your input as we do so. Much like the Hotel California, I don't think any one of you individually are going to be able to escape continuing to work and support the FCC's ongoing work on this. So I very much look forward to working with all of you individually in the months and years ahead on these important issues. I can assure you that our staff will continue to safeguard numbering resources with the professionalism and integrity that we've all come to expect. So thank you once again for a great 2-year run. My best wishes for a productive meeting today. And I'm happy to stick around for a little bit and chat with some of you as you undertake your work. But again, really just want to express my thanks and appreciation to everything that you all do, the time you take out of your days to do this. It is much appreciated, and there's been tremendous benefits for the country and our communications network as a result of all of your work. So thank you again. Great to be with you today. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We appreciate you taking the time out this afternoon to join us. Now for announcements. First, I would like to welcome a new council member. Since our last NANC meeting in December, Carol Keith was appointed to serve as Vonage's alternate representative on the council. Welcome, Ms. Keith. Next, I would like to note that Linda Vanderloop recently retired from AT&T. Linda served as the CATA Working Group co-chair during the current NANC charter and was a member of the CATA Working Group in a prior charter, along with Jackie Walgamuth. I always get her name, Walgamuth. Linda's expertise in numbering issues, dedication, and hard work were key to the CATA's success in producing 2 reports presented to the NANC in 2024. We wish Linda well in her retirement. Finally, as I mentioned, this is our last meeting of the current charter and the last meeting we will have altogether. The NANC has been very busy and productive during this charter. 4 working groups worked diligently, met frequently, and produced numerous important reports and recommendations for the council's consideration. I want to thank everyone who has worked to make this charter a success, including our council members, working group members, and co-chairs, and importantly, the FCC staff. It has been an honor serving as the NANC chairwoman during this charter. Now, I'll turn the meeting back over to DFO Christy Sherman, who will conduct the roll call. If any member has a new ethics disclosure to make to the group, please respond when called with your name to indicate that you are present, and then make the relevant ethics disclosures at that time.
Okay, we'll start the roll call. Members online can unmute yourself and respond when it comes time for you. So Commissioner Karen Charles is here. Bridget Alexander White, our vice chair. I'm pretty sure Bridget is on.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm on the Queensbridge.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Chairwoman. 10X people.
John Nakamura, present.
Present. Lisa Marie Maxim, present.
800 Response Information Services. 800 Response Information Services. Ad Hoc Telecommunications Users Committee.
Susan Gately on. Hello.
Alliance for Telecommunications Industry Solutions. Could you give your name, please? AT&T.
Angela Day is present, not president.
Bandwidth.
Greg Rogers is here, as is Lisa Jo Freeman.
Great, thanks. Brightspeed.
Jeff Lanning is here with nothing to report.
You're online. Charter Communications.
Glenn Klepper is on, disclosing that I am a member and chair of the SGIGA Board of Directors. Also with me is Kathy Trope.
Okay, thank you. Comcast.
Beth O'Donnell is on.
Thank you. Competitive Carriers Association.
Angela Simpson is here, thank you.
Thank you. CTIA.
Amy Bender is here, along with Courtney Tallarico.
Electronic Privacy Information Center.
Chris Frischella here.
Google. Do we have anybody from Google? Encompass.
Hi, Chris Shipley representing Encompass.
Lumen.
Phil Lindsay is here for Lumen.
Maine Public Utilities Commission.
Michael Johnson here.
National Association of Attorneys General.
This is Tracy Nair from the North Carolina Department of Justice on behalf of NAG, and I have no further disclosures at this time. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. National Association of State Utility Consumer Advocates.
Good afternoon. Barrett Sheridan is on. Thank you.
New Mexico Public Regulation Commission. New Mexico Public Regulation Commission. North Dakota Public Service Commission. North Dakota Public Service Commission. NTCA.
Brian Ford is here.
Peerless.
Virginia Bodyfelt for Peerless Networks.
Okay. Virginia, we can hardly hear you, just so you are aware. Public Service Commission of District of Columbia.
This is Lara Howley-Walt.
Cinch Voice.
Allison Blevins with Cinch.
SIP Forum.
Rich Shockey for SIP Forum.
TDS Telecommunications.
Paul Magella with TDS.
Okay. Telnix.
David Caseman from Telmix here.
Okay. T-Mobile.
This is Rosemary Leist with T-Mobile, and I disclose that I am a member of the NAPM LLC.
US Telecom.
This is Josh Berkey, and I disclose that I'm the Executive Director of the Industry Traceback Group.
Verizon.
Diane Adams for Verizon.
Vonage.
Hi, Michael Ortega here from Vonage.
And then for our non-voting members, iConnective.
Chris Drake here, no new disclosures.
And
Kathy McMahon.
Oh, Kathy's here too, okay. Somos.
Joel Bernstein here, and Flo Weber is on the team's feed.
Okay, great. That concludes the roll call. Did I miss anyone, or did anyone join late? Nope. Okay, then that concludes the roll call, and I turn the meeting back to the chairwoman.
Thanks, Christy. For our first presentation, we'll hear an update from Brent Struthers, Director of the Secure Telephone Identity Governance Authority. Brent, the floor is yours.
I think we're on. I've been coming to these meetings since 1996, and I have a name tag. I've come a long way, baby. Brent Struthers with the STIGA. Thank you for inviting us to do this update to the Nancy. We've got the slides up on the screen. That guy can hold it up. It might even be bigger here. I'll go through this. I'll make this fairly quick. If anybody has any questions, you can interrupt me throughout or wait till I'm at the end, either one. So if you can go to the next slide, please, you'll see a little bit of our up till May 30th authorization registration history. As of May 30th, we had not quite 1,600 providers authorized. Now, in the past month, that's gone up a little bit. We've had about 100 more providers or so authorized in the past month. So I don't have my July 1 numbers, so you don't see the chart updated, but we've had a lot of activity this month. A lot of providers have been told one way or another or thought that there was a June 20th FCC third-party registration deadline, and so they've been in a hurry to get registered. The reality is the deadline's not until at least August at this point, but that's okay. We've seen a lot of activity in terms of providers coming in to get certificates. So that's shown a little bit on that chart. You see the tail end of that on the right going up precipitously, and it's gone up more since May 30th. We also have a number of providers, about 40, that were suspended for not providing their 499A data. That was data that the STIPA needs so they can determine their bills for the year to see how much they're going to pay. Most of them are probably going to be minimum payers, but they hadn't provided the data. Now, that's actually good news. Last year at this time, we had about 80 providers that were late in providing that data, and we have a good bit many providers now. So more providers, fewer people late. Obviously, this is bleeding out into people's, they know what they're doing now, so they're providing the 499 data that the PA needs a little earlier. So I think things are getting a little bit smoother, so that's good to see. We still have 15 authorized STICAs. We've got another one possibly in the works, so we might have 16 in the near future, but right now we're still sitting at 15. So any questions on that fabulous registration data? All right, let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, leadership, we've got some changes there. First time we've had changes since the creation of the GA. I think somebody already mentioned that Linda Vanderloop retired. She was our STIGA chair since the start of the GA in 2018. We have two new folks. We have Glenn Klepper, who was the vice chair, is now the chair, and we have Gunnar Haley from Microsoft, who is now our vice chair. So we've had some significant changes in leadership. The good thing is since Glenn took over, the board hasn't completely blown up. It seems to be doing okay. So it's actually doing quite well. We really do want to thank Linda for her leadership of the STIGA over the years. She's done a lot of work there. She's been a tremendous asset to us, and we're going to miss her. But I know we're in good hands with Gunnar and Glenn, and well, that's that. Hopefully we don't have any more changes anytime soon there. In terms of policy compliance, we had some SPC token complaints last year, which, believe it or not, was the last time I did this presentation, against a few providers that the board was still going through. We actually had two providers that we found were doing improper attestation, and they had not been suspended, but they were on probation. They had a 6-month probation where if they caused any more problems within that 6 month, we'd go back and take a look at taking away their SPC token. They didn't cause any more problems. Hooray. So in January, we took them off probation, and we had one more complaint that we were considering at the end of the year, and we wrapped that up without any kind of suspension or probation because they changed their practices to show that they were doing things properly. That's the result we want with any of those token complaints. We want to make sure people are doing things properly. We don't want to kick them out of the system. So far, so good with that. So far this year, we haven't had any SBC token complaints against people doing things improperly. Doesn't mean people aren't doing things improperly. It just means we haven't had any complaints about it this year. The funding framework, and we talked about the non-payers and the people who haven't provided the 499A data going down. The good news is we're fully funded again for 2025, and as usual, we're not trying to make excess money. We're just trying to pay the bills. So we'll see what happens with 2026. We won't have the funding numbers for 2026 until probably October of this year. But right now, we're fully funded for the year. Cross-border shaken. This is initially Canada and the U.S. We've been working on this software for quite some time. I was really hoping we'd get it in before the end of the year, but it looks like we're going to have the release available for testing in December, and y'all know what happens with testing in December. Testing in December gets moved to January. So we'll probably have testing and implementation in January for the cross-border software, and that means that we'll probably have in earnest Canadian calls and U.S. calls being signed and accepted in those different countries toward the beginning of next year. It's cross-border on Shaken Outreach. I'm going to do today my very last, I think, Nancy report. That's sad. But we did do the 2024 Shaken report, and it seems like 100 years ago now, but that's up on our website. So if you want to see what we did last year, you can go check out that report. And then Glenn and I will be at SIPNOC in September, and we will provide an update at the SIPNOC meeting. So if you're at the SIPNOC meeting, you can hear us. If you're not going to hear us. That is all I have for the update. Do we have any questions? Per usual, thank you.
Anybody in the room? No, and I don't see any hands online, so I think you're off the hook.
Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brent. Next, we'll hear an update from Teresa Patton, co-chair of the North American Portability Management. Teresa, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the NAPM LLC, it's my honor to provide an update on our recent activities. There have been 2 NPAC releases so far this year. 5.2.1 was deployed in February, and 5.2.1.1 was deployed on May 18th. Thank you. The next NPAC release, 5.3, will be limited to new functionality required to support the new data center build-outs, and will go live in the first quarter of 2026, with mechanized user connectivity testing taking place in the third quarter of this year. And in regards to the Contract Implementation Committee, there have been 7 new PTRS user applications approved for NPAC data access. And iConnective now has an authorized NPAC user badge program, which allows NPAC users to amplify their credibility as a trusted source for NPAC data. In regards to other NPAC activities, the data center rebuild is ongoing, and additional questions, is in progress, and updates will continue to be sent to mechanized users, vendors, and all users and PTRS users regarding the schedule and what changes are needed. Any additional questions were submitted, additional questions were submitted to the RFI RFQ respondents, and follow-up responses were received. The NAPM LLC is in the process of taking the next steps as required, and the FCC DA 24-104, docket number 23-337, which was released February 6, 2024. Thank you. Next slide. In regards to a snapshot from 2024 of outstanding service and operational accomplishments, iConnective received high customer satisfaction results again, and that is 6 years in a row. And they exceeded contractual requirement of 99.99% service availability with no SLR penalties. And in regards to operational achievements, there were 32 million inter-provided ports that were activated, 102 million non-pooled transactions were processed, 88,000 pooled blocks were processed, and they completed over 1,000 SPID migrations. That's all for the report. The only other thing I would like to say is that, as a reminder, the NAPM LLC is always looking for new membership. And for anyone interested, you can either go to our website or reach out to myself, Teresa Patton, or my counterpart co-chair, Deb Tucker with Verizon. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Next, we'll hear a report on the annual performance review of the North American Numbering Plan Administrator from Laura Howley-Walt, co-chair of the Numbering Administration Oversight Working Group, NAOWG. Laura, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and good afternoon, Nancy members. It's a pleasure to be here. The NAOWG has 4 reports for your consideration today. On the next slide. The NAOWG, just as a reminder to everybody, we are comprised of service providers, state commission representatives, and representatives from interested organizations to oversee the contracts for the North American Numbering Plan Administrator, the reassigned Numbering Database Administrator, and the Billing and Collection Agent. The NAPA performs numbering activities, pooling administration, and P&E activities The RNDA administers the reassigned numbering database, and the BNC agent performs financial activities to support the NAMPA and the RNDA. And the NAOWG has for years dealt with and overseen the contract performance for these contracts. The NAMPA and the RNDA contracts, Somos is their vendor, and the BNC agent is Welsh. We've been meeting monthly, and we discuss the reports of our vendors and then provide recommendations to the NANC and to the FCC. The next slide would be that we've got 4 reports for you today. You're going to be hearing from me a lot. The first one is the 2024 NAMPA review. Then it would be the 2024 RNDA review, the 2024 BNC agent review, and then the recommendations for the 25-26 NAMP budget and the contribution factor. Next slide. Basically, we've used the same methodology for to develop our 3 performance review reports. We've developed evaluations based on the monthly deliverables that our 3 vendors provide to the NAOWG and a survey of users of the systems. We developed ratings of met or not met. And then we developed recommendations as a group, the NAOWG, and we drafted reports for review by the NANC, and you already have those reports. Okay, focusing just on the NAMPA review, we used a lot of different data in developing our evaluation. We looked at the monthly evaluation matrix of deliverables and also system updates. We had monthly calls to review monthly reports by the NAMPA talking about numbering administration. We also had a survey. And our survey this year, we've had an annual survey, but it's a little different this year because on October 28th, 2024, the numbering administration, pooling administration, and PNE administration was combined into one combined numbering administration system. So we added some questions on our annual survey to ask about how the transition went, and also how the new combined NAS has been operating. And this survey is divided. There's some questions specifically for service providers and some specifically for state regulators. Okay, next slide. And as a result of our review, we believe that the NAMPA met that's the rating that we've given it because they've met their requirements. They've provided competent and reliable service, and their decisions and recommendations were within requirements and expectations. And some of the deliverables that we looked at in developing this rating was the administration of the NAMP, the pooling administration, and PNEs. How numbers were allocated to service providers, status reports on the implementation of the combined NAS. We also looked at metrics of system availability. NAMPA also provided us with quarterly self-assessments, and they provided a very comprehensive annual report for 2024. And then as part of the technical requirements document, we've recommended some areas of performance in a performance improvement plan. The first one is to develop more of a communications plan to alert when there are troubles and when repairs are made. We were also thinking of that NAMPA could look at alternatives to gain feedback from service providers and state regulators as they use the system. We wanted to institute an annual operations review, and we were looking to enhance the quarterly self-assessments by seeing if NAMPA could discuss some of the, issues that have arisen during the quarter with how they've corrected the problems and how they've enhanced their system. And we also have a few other ideas in our performance review that perhaps NAMPA could provide additional clarity in its status updates, provide additional statistical analysis of the trends in numbering, and then to ensure implementation of the NADSBIRD database interface pursuant to the TRD. Those were some of our recommendations. And does anyone have any questions, comments? Phil?
So this is Phil Lindsay with Lumen. On that last bullet on the, where there are other opportunities, where it specifies the ensurement of the implementation of the NAS-BIRDS database interface implementation pursuant to the NAMPA TRD. As the co-chair of the NAOWG, we've been receiving some updated statuses on a monthly basis. However, it appears as though we have not received ultimate confirmation that the necessary agreements are in place. And I was hoping that maybe SOMOS, as the NAMPA, could provide us with update on whether or not that confirmation is going to occur, and then whether or not there's any additional information on what kind of, drop dead date that needs to occur in order to make sure that that interface is functional by the end of the base term of the contract.
If Flo is on the Teams, Flo can answer.
Yes. This is Florence Weber with Somos NAMPA. And as previously stated on prior NAOWG meetings, we are planning to be compliant with this requirement by November.
Is there any date to which SOMOS understands that any agreements need to take place before to ensure that is going to complete?
As far as the date, not at this time. I can't provide that.
I see Chris Drake has his hand up, I believe.
Okay. Chris?
Thank you. This is Chris Drake on the Teams call. I'm speaking for iConnective. We appreciate the opportunity to address the NAOWG and the Commission and the committee chair and vice chair, and of course all the stakeholders here at this NANC session about the status of the required mechanized interface in the combined NAS from our perspective. The CNAS is a key component of the Commission's mission to continuously advance the administration of numbering, and that interface deliverable was included in the RFP and contract to SOMOS in order to increase automation for the carrier community, to reduce errors and the corresponding rework and costs those always entail. Unfortunately, this deliverable has become a protracted multi-year journey and is now, I would say, at very high risk of not being completed at all within the 5-year initial term, as Phil mentioned. Just as a brief reminder, the FCC award obligation on the winning supplier to deliver on all requirements at the price they were awarded and agreed to in their contract. The TRD material in the RFP and ultimate contract expressly required SOMOS, the awardee, to establish this mechanized interface with iConnective BIRDS, which is a very long-standing de facto standard for managing information exchange between carriers, including critical routing data. iConnective's committed to supporting the FCC and the industry in this important requirement and has been very responsive to every SOMOS request on the subject. In fact, the quote to support this mechanized interface was provided by iConnective 2 years ago. After substantial time passed, iConnective reworked the resources and timelines to continue to maintain the deadline. But we are now at a point where the work must begin by July the 1st to deliver by November 30th. This means the contract, which Phil asked about, any contract deliverables to support delivery must be fully executed by June 30th, at least in the case of the iConnective Birds interface with Somos. That's less than a week away. The team has assessed the project, and we feel we should acknowledge and be transparent that this deliverable will not be available until 2026 if we do not start the work by July the 1st. We all know there is the traditional blackout period that Brent had mentioned leading up to year end. We have this in the telecom industry forever to protect the stability of communications infrastructure through the holiday period. Moreover, iConnective has hard commitments for those resources that further preclude squeezing this delivery into December. With respect to progress towards that agreement, the key question asked, there really has not been any meaningful progress. 2 years down the road, which started even 2 years late by any measure, Somos has said very little about the contract we proposed other than to request a massive discount and demand untenable intellectual property ownership. In any case, not delivering by November 30th means that this requirement is many years late and will not be delivered at all in the 5-year term in the contract. Speaking for myself for just a moment, I believe this would be an unprecedented and entirely unnecessary failure in the entire history of our country's numbering plan administration. I have great difficulty seeing with my experience that this contract could be executed in less than a week without a massive and immediate injection of good faith into the process. Where I come from, missing the deliverable by such a wide margin would be a material and significant breach of contract. Speaking for iConnective as I wrap up, we want to assure the Commission and industry stakeholders that iConnective is committed to the goals in this contract. We can be relied upon to deliver on our commitments as we have demonstrated time and time again. And we will act, as always, with a very high degree of integrity to support this Commission and their industry objectives. The next step here is entirely with Somos, and it must happen with a strong sense of urgency if compliance to the numbering administration contract is to be secured. Hopefully you find this helpful.
Thank you, Chris. This is Phil Lindsay with Lumen again. So with that, can Somos confirm that there will be an agreement in place by July 1st?
Flo?
Bill, at this time, the only thing that I can state is that, again, NAMPA will be compliant with this requirement by November.
So according to what Chris Drake of iConnective just stated, that would need to happen before July 1st in order for that to occur. So by your statement, I presume you're stating that it will be signed by July 1st?
Again, as I previously stated, NAMPA will be compliant with this requirement by November.
Okay, Phil, are you finished?
Okay, so, I mean, I guess the next question is what is preventing Somos from entering into an agreement with iConnective to meet the requirement by the end of the first term of the NAMPA contract?
Flo, do you have anything else to say on this topic?
I do not at this time.
Okay, so I have a little bit more than, and I apologize. So just to provide folks with a little bit of background, the NAMPA contract was awarded back in 2020. In early 2021, iConnected filed an ex parte stating that the contract was awarded at approximately 40% more than the next the next highest bid, or the lowest bid, as the case is. And so far, it seems as though the cost of this interface is really the issue associated with the lack of a commitment in order to establish that agreement. And I'm thinking with that differential in bids, that it seems a bit unreasonable that cost should be an issue associated with an interface. And again, as we all may recall, 12 months ago, we were having a similar conversation regarding the interface with the NPAC. Fortunately, that was implemented by the launch date, which was imperative in order to reduce the impact of, or eliminate the impact of call routing issues. Similarly with this one, although there is an existing manual process in place, it is fraught with potential errors and consumes time of service providers to resolve those errors, which is very contrary to the whole intent of the combined contract and the contract that was awarded back in 2020, which is to create efficiencies for service providers in the industry as a whole. Additionally, in addition to that background, the TRD required parallel implementation of both the RNDA and the NAS, and the initial contact or discussion associated with the BIRDS interface was in September of 2022, 2 years essentially after that contract was awarded. And since then, so it's basically been since September 2022 that this issue has been outstanding. And now we're basically at the 11th hour again, potentially threatening the ability for service providers to take advantage of the efficiencies that they spend a ton of time incorporating into the TRD. And thank you, Karen Rippenkroger and Laura Dalton. Thank you. Thank you, Lara. Laura Dalton, thank you. Those two spent an insurmountable amount of time going through and combining the separate pooling administration and the NAMPA code administration TRD into one in order to take advantage and incorporate those efficiencies into one document so that contract could be awarded. And so there was tremendous amount of work that went into doing that, and to now have those efficiencies kind of threatened just because of a cost dispute associated with an interface where it clearly is the industry's paying a premium for what it's receiving. So I'm just concerned for the industry, not just Lumen, but it does impact Lumen, and I know, and the feedback I've received from others in the industry is that it's impactful across the industry. So with that, I can turn it back over to Christy.
Do we have anybody else here in the room who wants to say anything on this performance review? David Kasem?
This question's for Phil. Phil, now that the NANC charter is coming to an end and will not be rechartered, can you tell us what role NAOWG will be playing in contract review?
At this time, I have not been informed of any mechanism that would be put in place for us to provide the technical expertise that was required to put that TRD together initially. And as you'll see later on in this presentation, kind of for the future work, TRD updates was part of that. It's unclear as to kind of where that's going to stand, as far as the ability to get that expertise and the incorporation of that information in the TRD to help enhance the future contracts.
Sorry,
Yes,
just
so-
really clear, is NAOWG also going to cease to exist?
Yes, NAOWG is part of the NANC. So the NAOWG, the NANC itself, the council, and the other working groups will not be rechartered. And we and the staff are working on plans to transition the functions from the NANC to the staff, as the chairman indicated. So we don't have anything else we can share on that today, but we are working on plans for how to transition those functions.
Thank you.
Okay.
So Phil, Flo from Somos is not answering the question in terms of whether or not the contract will be signed by the end of the month. My question to you, but she says that things will be in place. I am not remembering her precise language. Is there another way things can come together without the contract being signed by the end of the month?
I guess, I'm not really in the position to understand that. iConnective might have some insight as to kind of what variables they might be able to accommodate in order to make sure that happens if it's not signed by July 1st. So I don't know if Chris, you have any insight or any additional detail you might be able to provide that might allow for that contract to be established post July 1st.
Chris, Drake?
Yeah, thank you, Phil. I would say I'll reiterate one thing and then complete your answer. Because of the blackout at the holiday period and other commitments we have to deliver by year end to other customers, we are not in a position to likely do this in December, which means 2026, perhaps early, but nonetheless not 2025. And we have already reworked the timeline and resources after substantial delay in any engagement with Somos on the terms and timeline in order to try to present to this NANC a workable solution that does achieve the objective. So we have done that, but it requires work to start July the 1st. As to what alternative there could be when one doesn't answer the question about the contract between iConnective and Somos, I guess I can only imagine throwing large number of people at the workflow where it involves this interaction between NAMPA and birds might. I don't think anyone has really looked at that or thinks that's a good idea, but Somos might be able to rally massive resources to manually handle all the fallout that doesn't fall back to the carriers, which is a major issue this was meant to address, and keep the transactions moving very quickly. So that may be that, but that's all that I could imagine outside of contracting for it and building it as one would ideally do.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else in the room? Anyone else online? Chris, your hand is still up. Did you have further comments? Your hand's down. It's back up. Down. Okay, so we don't have any more online. We don't have anyone else in the room, so I think we can proceed to a vote.
Perfect. If the discussion is complete, I will now open the meeting for a vote to approve this performance review. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve?
Motion. T-Mobile makes the motion.
Can you say your name, Rosemary?
Rosemary Lice, T-Mobile.
Thank you, Rosemary Lice.
This is Rich Shockey. I'll second that.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you so much. Rick Shockey will second. With the second, we'll submit it to the council for a vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? The NANC approves the performance review of the North American Numbering Plan Administrator presented by the NAOWG. For our next presentation, we'll hear a report on the annual performance review of the reassigned numbers database administrator, once again for Laura Howley-Walt. Laura, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairwoman. As many of you know, the R&D, the Reassigned Numbers Database, is a database of disconnected phone numbers, and marketers can query the database to determine whether their customers still have working numbers or whether their phone numbers have been transferred to other people, and the database helps compliance with TCPA. For the 2024 performance review of the R&D, we used an evaluation matrix that's provided to us from the R&D. We had monthly reports and discussed performance on our monthly calls. We also performed a survey of service providers who contribute and enter their numbers of disconnected customer and telephone numbers into the R&D, and the users who actually use the R&D. We did a customer survey of them, and that's what found was the basis of our recommendation. The rating that we recommend is that the R&D met its specifications because it met the requirements of the contract. It provided competent and reliable performance, and the decisions and recommendations of the RNDA were within requirements and expectations. And next slide. We evaluated different performance activities of the RNDA in making this recommendation. Their administration of the RNDA contract, also how they made sure that connectivity by service providers was maintained, and also users that they were able to query, and the query functionality was maintained. These were in monthly metrics and also quarterly self-assessments. And we did develop a PIP for the RNDA. And basically, on the service provider side, we were looking to see whether the R&D could look at variations on its reporting window for service providers to provide their data to the RNDA, and also the credentialing process. For users, we were suggesting that the RNDA look into additional subscription tiers. We also were recommending that the RNDA look to obtain more direct feedback from users, both service providers and users, to see what enhancements could be made. And in the quarterly assessments for the RNDA to discuss issues or problems that had arisen during the quarter and how the RNDA was able to resolve those problems. So that is, and we supplied the NANC with a full report on this, but that's basically what we've got with the RNDA. Does anybody have any questions?
Do we have any questions in the room? Doesn't look like it. We don't have any hands up online.
Okay.
So I think we can proceed to a vote.
Okay, great. Thank you, Laura. If the discussion is complete, I will now open the meeting for a vote to approve the performance review. Would anyone like to provide a motion?
Lumen so moves.
Thank you, Phil. Phil Lentz of Lumen. Do we have a second?
David Case from Telnick seconds.
Thank you, David Kasem, for your second. And with that second, we'll submit it to the council for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? The NANC approves the performance review of the reassigned numbers database administrator presented by the NAOWG. The final presentation from the NAOWG comes in 3 parts. First, Laura will deliver the annual performance assessment of the billing and collection agent, Welch LLP. Next, Gail Young of Welch LLP will deliver the billing and collection agent report. And finally, Phil Lintz, also a co-chair of the NAOWG, will present the report concerning the North American Numbering Plan fund size projections and contributions factor. Following the presentations, the council will vote on these reports. Please welcome Gail and Phil, and welcome back Laura.
Good afternoon again. And the BNC agent collects the assessments from the service providers and distributes these funds to the NAMPA to fund the NAMPA and the RNDA. So what we did another performance review. The data that we looked at were the monthly deliverables that Welsh provided the NAOWG. Then we discussed those deliverables on our monthly calls. We looked at customer service data, and then we looked at some other observations that that NAOWG members made. And then we also looked at the process that Welsh used to provide information to prepare for the contribution factor and the budget. The rating for Welsh was met because Welsh met its requirements. It provided competent and reliable service, and its decisions and recommendations were within the requirements and expectations. And basically, what we did, we looked at several of the deliverables that Welsh provided, its collection of funds for the R&D and for the NAMPA. We looked at the fact that it managed multiple funds for both the RNDA and NAMPA. We looked at the compliance activities it took with the audit. And we also reviewed some of the preliminary work that the BNC agent made to make the final determination or the final recommendation of how to distribute the R&D refund to service providers who had paid into the creation of the R&D. Also, the BNC agent provided the NAOWG with a 2024 operational review, which was very concise and helpful. And this ends my part of the presentation, and I just want to thank all of the NAOWG members for their hard work, their dedication, their insights. It's been a pleasure working with you all, and I've greatly enjoyed it, and particularly to Phil Lindsay and Karen Rippenkroger, who I couldn't have asked for better co-chairs. So thank you very much.
Gail's up next. Gail, go ahead. I think we may be having a technical difficulty. There you are. Go ahead, Gail. Are you muted? We're not getting any sound from you. Let's see what's going on here.
Are you able to hear me now?
Now, yes. Yep, there you go.
Okay, thank you.
Loud and
Okay,
clear.
good afternoon, everyone. I will be presenting the proposed budget for the period October 2025 to September 2026 and the related contribution factor. As you can see, we have the costs broken out by major category. The first one, at 7.1 million, is for the NAMPA and pooling administration. We reduced that amount by the amount that is contributed by the international participants, Canada and other non-US countries. The amount they contribute to is solely for the NAMPA portion of the contract, which Somos identified to us as being 43% of the total cost. The reason for this is that those countries perform their own CO code administration. Their amount is determined by taking the proportionate percentage of the total average estimated population of all member countries and taking their proportion and applying it to the discounted amount relating to any NEMP portion of total costs. Their contribution is further discounted for the amount of NAMPA work done in each of their countries. In Canada, it's by 25%, and other non-US countries, 66%. So by reducing the $7.1 million amount by the $187,000 amount for the other member countries, the total amount of NEMP administration and pooling costs that has to be borne by the US carriers is $6.9 million. Carrier audits are required under Section 47 of the Code of the Federal Regulations 52.15K and FCC 00-42. The amount provided for was as directed by the FCC for possible carrier audits in the upcoming budget period. The billing and collection agent costs were provided for based on the contract that was awarded in July 2025, which covers the period August 2024 to July 2029. The data collection agent is USAC. The amount provided is for their administration of the Form 499As. The amount we are providing for is an estimate as provided by USAC. The annual operating audit of $59,000 is for the external audit as required under the terms of the contract as performed by Ernst & Young. And the amount provided for is based on prior year's history. Next, we have bank charges. Bank charges are the charges to the fund for various costs and the administration of the fund. An estimated amount of $50,000 has been provided for based on prior history. The bad debts are for accounts billed each year where we are unable to collect the amounts. We have allowed for $20,000 based on past history. Now, all of these costs are reduced by two items. One of them being interest income. The interest is estimated based on income earned from the bank and is based on what the current bank cash balances are and the interest rates that are in effect at this time. The last amount that reduces the cost is fees for filing Form 499A late. This is a $100 fee which is charged to carriers who do not file the Form 499A and have it certified by April 30th. This $100 fee is over and above their NEMP fee that is required for funding these costs. So the total projected cost from October 2025 to September 2026 is $7,700,313. To this amount, we added a $1.25 million contingency allowance, which was decided upon by the NOWG at the last meeting. This amount is provided to cover unexpected costs, such as change orders that have not yet been issued, any costs related to changes in the scope of work as determined by the FCC, and any other unforeseen costs which have not been provided in the budget at this time. That brought the total costs up to $8,950,313. This amount was reduced by $1,236,460, which is the anticipated surplus at September 30th, 2025, which is based on the April 2025 NOWG report that can be found on our website. This means that the net U.S. carriers contribution that has to be funded by U.S. carriers for 2025-2026 is $7,719,853. The projected revenue base, based on the Form 499A filed with USAC for 2025, has an estimated projected revenue base of $70.7 billion. So based on the formula to determine the contribution factor, the proposed contribution factor for this year is 0.0001091%. And that concludes my report, and I will now pass it over to Phil.
Thank you, Gail. Again, my name is Philip Lindsay with Lumen. The presentation that Gail just went through is the work that the BNC agent does on an annual basis, and the NAOWG meets several times to go over that information. And then we also establish the contingency factor based on the NAOWG's understanding of the industry and potential issues that might come up that might impact that fund. And thus we establish a contingency fund amount, which is supposed to help with any items that might come up in, like with a change order or unexpected items. And depending on that risk environment, that number might be modified from time to time. In the past, we've had some situations where that contingency fund was kind of stretched kind of thin. And so based on some of those historical learnings, we've come up with, based on the status of the contract, potential change orders, that we established at $1.25 million as a contingency fund. And then with the addition of the surplus, that $230,000 that Gail, or $1,230,000 that Gail mentioned in her presentation, our balance to be funded is that $7.7 million that Gail also represented there, which again comes and based on the revenue base of the industry, which is and all the revenues across the industry, which is $70,778,931 or $31,000. Sorry. That contribution factor is calculated at that 0.0001091. And it's our recommendation from the NAOWG that be the budget and the associated contribution factor. And then also on that next slide, there's some history as to what that contribution factor has looked like over time, as well as the clearly decreasing revenue amounts of our industry as calculated each year. So it's a good historical reference for those that are interested. And then on the next slide, the NAOWG future work efforts, which of course this presentation was put in place before we got the announcement that the Nancy was not going to be rechartered. We identified some things that we were anticipating to work on, and that is the continued oversight of the vendors through the monthly and quarterly annual vendor review, and then providing updates to the evaluation matrix that we work from, and especially based on kind of our experience over the last couple of years, the need to update those matrices to more consistently align with the statement of work and the TRD. Additionally, because of we do an annual survey. That survey is done, and there's a significant amount of work that's done by the FCC and industry members to put that survey together, get it approved by OMB. I think that's correct, and get that administered. We need to combine, because now going forward we have a combined NAMPA PA arrangement, so those questions are now need to be consolidated into a single set of questions for the NAMPA, including both functions, but just a single response or a single set of questions versus two sets of different questions, and then also maybe any updates associated with the R&DA type survey questions. Finally, the TRD updates, based on some of the issues that we've seen associated with the implementation of this new NAS, the membership agreed that it would be important to obtain updates or provide updates to those TRDs to make sure that any ambiguities are specified or clarified within the TRD document. With that, the NAOWG group members, everybody on this slide, thank you so much for all the effort. You know, we met basically monthly, you know, for as long as anybody's been involved with this. It's a monthly meeting. It's a 2-hour meeting, intense meeting. Many times we go over, and so I just got to extend my appreciation to everybody's willingness to spend the time and the effort in those meetings and asking questions and ensuring that we're doing the industry appropriately, the benefit it deserves. So with that, we have our future meetings. Those future meetings, of course, again, this presentation was put together before we learned that the NANC charter was not going to be renewed. Therefore, these meetings are going to be canceled. So those that have those meeting notices on their calendars, please expect to see a cancellation notice coming from me on those, or Karen Rippenkroger might be sending those out. I can't remember who set that meeting up, but we'll get those out to you as well. So, and thank you, Lara. Thank you, Karen. I couldn't have asked for much better co-chairs in the NAOWG. We all have our the specialties that we bring in. I know Lara is just an awesome writer. I'm not one that likes to write that much, and she is just awesome at putting things together. And frankly, she does a great job in reading our minds. Frankly, when she puts that down on paper, I'm like, how do you know that? Because we didn't say it. You got to be reading our minds. So anyway, and then Karen, her historical knowledge of the NAOWG before it was the NAOWG, and all the work that she's done prior to the NAOWG, I knew nothing about this coming into as a co-chair. She's the reason why I know what I know, because most of it came from her. So thank you, everybody, for your participation, and especially to the co-chairs.
Yes, thank you to the co-chairs. Thank you, Phil and Karen.
With that, I open it up for questions as far as the performance review and the contribution factor.
Is there anybody in the room? Anybody? Comments? Nothing in the room? I don't see any hands online, so with that, I think we can move to a vote.
Thank you very much, Christy. Thanks, Laura and Gail and Phil, for these presentations. Greatly appreciated. If the discussion is complete, we will move to the vote on these reports. We will have 2 separate votes this afternoon. First, on the annual performance assessment of the billing and collection agent, and second, on the report and recommendation for the North American Numbering Plan, fund size projections, and contribution factor. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the annual performance assessment of the billing and collection agent?
This is Rich Shockey, I motion.
Thank you, Rick Shockey, for that motion. Do we have a second?
Phil Lindsay with Lumen seconds.
Thank you, Phil Lindsay, for your second. And with that second, we'll submit this performance assessment to the council for a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays out there? The NANC approves this performance assessment of the NAOWG. Next, would anyone like to make a motion to approve the report and recommendations for the North American Numbering Plan, fund size, projections, and contribution factor?
Angela Days, I motion.
Angela Days of AT&T, thank you for that motion. Do we have a second?
Allison Blevins with Cinch will second.
Allison, thank you for that second. With that second, we'll submit it to the council for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Are there any? Are there any? Thank you. Are there any nays out there? The Nancy approves this report of the NAOWG. Thank you to Laura, Gail, and Phil, and to the NAOWG co-chairs and members for all of your hard work on these important issues and all of the various issues that you've worked on over the years. So thank you so very much. We will now move on to public participation. Do we have any comments from members of the public in the room?
Don't see anyone.
We also enable public participation through comments filed in the docket and through a dedicated email address, livequestions@fcc.gov. First, we will turn to comments filed in the docket.
There are no comments in the docket.
Thank you very much. A public notice for this meeting released on May 12th, 2025, asked members to file comments in the Commission's electronic comment filing system, and we don't have any comments.
Sorry.
Oh, that's fine. You're good. And lastly, do any Nancy members?
Wait.
Did I
We gotta
miss?
do this one.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any public comments or questions received through the livequestions.gov email address? Apologies.
Yes, there are. There's one. I'll read it to you. Chairman Carr said today that he's moving Nancy functions to the commission itself. Can you provide more information about what Nancy tasks are moving and if any are staying with the Nancy? Is there any indication on whether he plans to recharter the Nancy? So I can take this one. These questions may have already been answered in the course of our discussion up till today, but as the members know, the charter expires on September 8th of this year, and the chairman has made the decision not to recharter the Nancy at this time. And as a result, this will be our last meeting of the full council, as you all are aware. As I answered earlier, the working groups are a function of the Nancy itself, and so they will also not be rechartered. We had during this charter 4 working groups, as you know. It was very productive. We've had lots of reports, but all of the outstanding referrals, the charges to the working groups were completed at the December meeting. So the only outstanding functions of any of the working groups is the ongoing contract oversight functions of the NAOWG, which we've discussed in detail here today. And those functions will be transitioned over to the numbering team in the staff. And as I commented before, the staff is working on a plan for transitioning all of those functions over so that that will be transitioned by the time that the Nancy is, expired on September 8th. So we are working on that actively internally, and there aren't any other details to share on that at this time, but that is an overview for people watching outside about what's happening and which functions will be transitioned over. Looks like there's a question in the room.
Well,
Rick Schechter.
yes. I guess from all of us who have been doing this stuff, and in my case, 12 years, we just stay tuned for an NPRM coming to you. I mean, there are questions about reports Susan Gately and I did, because we are deeply, deeply concerned about the exhaust of the NAMP itself and what real steps need to be taken in the short term to address the problem. Because between fixed wireless access and machine-to-machine and IoT, we are now at 250 million NAMP numbers in use today. And fixed wireless access is a wonderful product. All of the wireless carriers are doing very, very well. It could be as high as 20 million or more numbers are just dedicated to that application alone. You know, do we just wait? You know?
Well, the Nancy has produced a number of reports this year, and just like during this charter, and like always, those reports have been submitted to the Wireline Bureau. And as always, all of those reports will be considered by the commission, and the commission will decide what actions to take on them going forward. To the extent that the commission decides to issue an NPRM on any particular numbering matter, that will all be public, as our processes always are, and in compliance with the Administrative Procedures Act. So I can't answer about timing of any particular proceeding, of any issue that was addressed by the NANC, but to the extent that the commission decides to move forward with proceedings on that, that will be public as always, and there will be an opportunity for public comments in those proceedings. Phil?
Thank you, Christy. I also want to emphasize, as the NAOWG performed its functions of oversight of the contract, we had very real-time kind of experiences associated with what we think would be beneficial in order to improve service to service providers. In void of that, it's going to be very difficult to update documents such as the TRD, those kinds of things, without some maybe a longer runway associated with those updates. So I just wanted to kind of note that, because if it's out of mind or out of sight, then it's going to be out of mind. It's going to be much more difficult to create the changes necessary to make sure that we get those enhancements, especially when we're always involved with it on a monthly basis. It makes them a whole lot easier to get those updates and provide those updates and have them, valued updates associated with that. So just wanted to kind of put that out there.
Okay, so this is the public participation part, so I hope that what I said answers the question that we got through the live questions inbox, but since this seems to be a topic of discussion, does any members here in the room want to address this before we move on? What about online? Let me see if we have any hands up. I don't see any hands up. So I appreciate your comments, Phil. As you know, we've talked offline as well. The numbering team is working on these transitions. They're aware of all of the issues with this, and they'll be working to make sure that everything that needs to be done in transition will be done. I don't have any more information that I can.
Apologies if I was out of order on that.
No, it's fine. We have a separate time for members to talk anyway, so I expected that some of you would want to talk about that, but it relates to this question, so it makes perfect sense to wrap it up here. Okay, so I think if we don't have any more comments, I still don't see any hands raised. I can hand it back to the chairwoman.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Christy. And lastly, do any NANC members have other business they wish to address? I'd like to recognize Rosemary Lice of T-Mobile.
Rosemary Lice with T-Mobile. I couldn't help myself. Please settle in. I have 5 minutes of history to talk about, and I hope that many of the things that I have to say will resonate with some of you and maybe add some levity. Oh. Farewell to the NANC. The Telecom Act of 1996 was a landmark piece of legislation in the United States that dramatically reshaped the telecom landscape. It was the first major overhaul of telecommunications law since the Communications Act of 1934, and its intent was to promote competition, and it did just that. The North American Numbering Council was initiated and ultimately created and chartered as a result of the Telecom Act, and the first meeting was in October of 1996. The reigning charge was to recommend impartial administration of numbering resources. But we had a ginormous problem to solve back then. And in order to open up competition, we were going to blow through telephone numbers because of pagers and fax machines. We were already looking at NAMP exhaust between 2005, if you can believe it or remember it, and 2012. We were at a critical mass. Many people today think that we came up with porting and pooling as a way to help consumers and to enhance competition. But in reality, we needed a way to preserve the NAMP first. We created, implemented, lobbied. We standardized porting regulations in this room. We moved mountains to come up with the concept of porting. We did trials in the states and received standardized federal regulation for pooling. And according to ChatGPT this morning, our current exhaust projection is 2061. But I'm sure there's folks in this room that would probably take exception with that, or they could tell me I'm wrong or right. We are smarter than ChatGPT sometimes. I have been honored to be part of the NANC for 28 years. I want to share with you a snippet of my NANC journey as we bid farewell to the NANC. Shortly after the Telecom Act was passed, MCI began recruiting for engineers to put together an interim porting team. And when I refer to interim, I'm referring to a call forwarding mechanism. True real-life porting, as we know it, was only a concept at that point. MCI began with about 20 employees, and I was one of them. We had a small room with no windows. We had some computers, lots of typewriters, several big clunky wireline telephones, a few file cabinets, copy paper, pencils, and rulers. Our goal was to figure out how to work with the bell companies to call forward their customer lines into our lines. In other words, how to provision and translate our lines to pass traffic to our new customers. We had provisioners, translators, and order coordinators in our group. I wanted to start with the order coordination piece. We needed to devise a process for this, and we began with an order form drawn with pencil and paper and a ruler on copy paper. Then we typed out we typed it out on a typewriter, and we call this form the Interim Number Portability Form, INPF. That was one of the first instances of our acronyms. Huh? Okay. Today, this would be our LSR. We would find bell contacts, devise a list of fax numbers from them, and when MCI salespeople would send us something saying that they found a willing customer to call their bell number, to call forward their bell number to MCI, we would send the manual form we created and copied on a copy machine through the fax machine to the bell company and wait for a response from them on the fax. We had 4 fax machines in our little room and many bell offices to onboard, and very soon we had many, many INPF papers. For the first few weeks, I had the honor of manually marrying the sent forms and the received forms that came back from various bell offices, which was a huge, tedious job and one that made me wonder why I ever went to college to do this kind of work. Then we would manually type the customer's name and phone number and other pertinent data into a table, and that is how the competition started and the beginning of sort of porting, interim porting began. We carefully filed our INPFs away in our little filing cabinets, and our little team grew very quickly into an actual organization. Nothing was more challenging than when we would actually need to move all of those call forward customers to actual ported customers once ported was up and running. Thank goodness for technology, because all of that manual work came with so many errors. I started the training department and then the project management department, and I was just on fire to succeed and make this process succinct. MCI hired a contracting team from Canada to help set up our LNPA war room. And they were telling us stories about how their careers started wearing roller skates in central offices, plugging in the phone lines to connect calls. I was reminded last night when writing this out that I'm actually the age that they were when they were teaching us. And well, back then I thought they were ancient, so there's that. I heard about an organization in Washington, the NANC, who would play a foundational role in providing advice, guidance, and sound industry standards in an advisory role to the FCC. I heard they would develop competitive and fair guidelines and promote neutral number administration, and I was so excited about the possibility that all carriers would be working together to make porting happen. It was a tall order. I asked my boss lady if I could attend the 2-day NANC meeting, and she said, absolutely not. She needed to keep me busy building her organization. I've used this as an example my entire career. Instead of holding people back from their true potential, bless people and let them go. Help people flourish. So I banged in sick, and I went to my first NANC meeting. This was back in 1997. Alan Hasselwander was the NANC chair. Diane Griffin-Harmon, Gerald Carlson, and Janine Grimes were the DFOs and assistant DFOs. Everyone at the big table was dressed fancy in suits, and they were either lawyers or executives back then. It was a controversial time, sometimes loud and always argumentative and very serious with lots of pomp and circumstance compared to today. It seemed as if each NANC member had someone that was sitting directly behind them who would walk up to the table and whisper into their ear, obviously a more technical person, somebody that could help them answer the next question. Karen Mulberry with MCI was that person for my company. She was whispering in the NANC member's ear, and I decided that very day, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be her someday. I was so incredibly nervous, but I introduced myself to her, and she took me under her wing right away. NANC met monthly then, so I went ahead and banged in sick for 3 more NANC meetings. I began joining Karen Mulberry's calls, both externally and internally. She shared all of the new meeting notices for all of the new committees under the NANC and under ADIS, because the ADIS committees were being put in place back then to assist also. And back then we weren't remote like we were today, so doing these like multiple jobs was tough. I researched how to get hired in a government affairs type of organization because I wasn't getting any help from my management. And that led me to become accepted to Concord Law School out of Los Angeles. It was one of the first online law schools, and that is what started my government affairs trajectory. Against my boss lady's wishes, I still felt so blessed as soon as I was able to transfer to government affairs internally at MCI alongside Karen Mulberry. I began traveling with the numbering circuit, became involved with everything I could with numbering and porting, met many of you along the way. When WorldCom bought MCI and the pink slips came, I was hired by Nextel, who was not on the NANC at the time, but thankfully, we were able to snag a seat, and I was able to become Karen Mulberry. I was appointed the person to whisper in the NANC member's ear for Nextel, Chris Bowe. I would meet him in the office in Herndon, and we would take a limo all the way down here to the NANC for a couple of years. I would have everything typed out, tell him what he needed to advocate, tell him the high points, and if there was anything we needed to vote on, how he needed to vote. Early on, Debbie Blue, who was one of the assistant DFO types back then, she was one of my favorite people. She was an assistant. She asked me if I was taking notes during the NANC, and I told her yes. I actually take verbatim, very quick. I'm a fast type and quick notes, and she asked if I could share them with her, and she created fantastic notes out of mine. So she did a great job, and then she distributed them. So I was the Nancy note taker for a few years, until my company decided to put me in the Nancy seat for myself. Soon after, they hired the first stenographer. The Nancy work was very intense back then, and there were so many documents we needed to review. It became way too much for the FCC and Debbie Blue to make all those copies. So I gained approval from Nextel to have a budget, and I made all the copies for the Nancy. Many of you around the table will remember the days that I would get out of the limo in front of the FCC with boxes and reams of paper that were heavy. It was commonplace for my Nancy colleagues to just pick up a box and help me bring it in and then distribute it on all the tables. Natalie McNamer was one of my biggest helpers, and she would come early specifically to help me, but everyone else would chip in also. I was never so happy when the FCC went green and we no longer had to order copies from the office supply store and haul them to the FCC. I chaired many committees and working groups, and something I think everyone in the room can resonate with is whenever we get a charge from the FCC to write a white paper, it would always seem to include some big issues that were like way outside of our scope or purview, or maybe sometimes we didn't even know what it meant. And I always wondered, how would that play out? Would we really be able to deliver something meaningful? Well, everyone always came together and gave their perspective using their own unique skill set, and we always rose to the occasion. Beth O'Donnell and I wrote an operating training manual for the Nancy many years ago with several revisions, and Marilyn Jones used to use that document for the new Nancy membership. Brent Struthers I saw today. I recall that he and I have used this platform in different ways. He would invite high-functioning homeschoolers to the area, local to the area, to learn about our process in Washington. And I was able to work with 4 interns over my career at my different companies, legal interns, and turn them into lawyers by coming to the Nancy meetings and showing them what this is all about and having them help write some of our papers and work with us. So finally, I got with the Sprint Nextel merger, and when Michelle Thomas brought me over to T-Mobile, I've been here ever since. So we've all lived through natural disasters together. We were able to stop that big train from wrecking when the WNP was rolled out, when we got all of our executives together like day and night over the Thanksgiving week to make sure that we could fix porting issues real time so that it would work when we rolled it out. We have enlisted advice from not only wireless, wireline, and VoIP providers, but state commissioners, consumer advocates, and industry experts, and we have had open discussions and consensus-based recommendations, which has improved the regulatory outcomes. I'm almost done. We played a major role in the support and creation of 988 as 3-digit suicide and mental health prevention lifeline, and we have preserved fair access to numbering resources, facilitated consumer choice, ensured efficient number management. I believe the most important role, and we've talked about this a couple times today, I believe the most important role we've had, especially of here recent, and also during the whole time, was the NAOWG. The committee has risen to exemplary status. The amount of time and energy that this group has constantly maintained over the life of the Nancy with those performance surveys and evaluations and the monthly oversight, including budget, is part of the reason all of our numbering vendors have become such well-oiled machines. I know the FCC will still be looking for our collective advice in some way, shape, or form, and was so happy to hear of that today in the meeting. And I'm looking forward to see how we can collaborate and work together to continue that good work somehow. It has been fascinating to watch the Nancy evolve over the years, bringing in technical experience, balancing the technical with policy and regulatory. The work we have accomplished is wide, but the favorite part of this journey for me has been the interactions with all of you on this team. The way in which we have all shown up, we do our very best, we bring our own skill set to the table. The level of integrity that we have all collectively had all of these years can be no higher. We have made lifelong friendships, watched our kids grow up, attended our family funerals across the country, and heck, many of us have even done triathlons together across the country. Being on the NANC and part of all of this has been my true honor and such a pleasure to serve with each and every one of you. Thank you.
Do we have other members of the NANC who would like to comment this afternoon? Please, anyone else? Okay, hearing none.
Yeah, and I don't see anything online.
No one online? Okay, perfect. Hearing none, I would like to just, if I can, Christy, just take a few minutes just to thank everyone for all of your hard work over the years and dedication to the NANC. It has meant so much to Americans across the board. The NANC is a true gem, and I'm really sad to see that the charter will not be renewed for another 2-year term. You know, as Commissioner of the Massachusetts Department of Telecommunications and Cable, and as a member of NARUC, it has been my distinct honor to serve as your chair for the last 2 years. It has meant so much to me. I've always loved numbers. So when I got this opportunity to chair the NANC, well, let me go back. When I got the opportunity to become a member of the NANC, I was just so thrilled in the work that you do. And you know, I really just want to go around the room and thank each and every one of you for all of your hard work. I've learned so much from all of you. I've learned so much from you, Richard.
Well, thank you, Commissioner, by the way. And it has been a pleasure to serve under you for the many, many years that you've suffered through us.
I have not suffered. It has been my pleasure, and I've learned so much from Phil, from Rosemary, from so many members in the room, just to name a few. But I'm really sad that we are parting. But I do want to ask members of the NANC, before we leave this afternoon, if we can just gather for a quick photo. That would mean so much to me. Rosemary had a lot to say, and she even gave me a few things to say. So I'd like to recognize some former chairs of the NANC, Alan Hasselwander, John Hoffman, Bob Atkinson, Tom Kutse, if I'm saying that, Kautsky, Betty Ann Kane, who I served under, Travis Kavula, Jennifer McKee, and of course, yours truly. I'd like to recognize some former DFOs and current DFOs. Diane Griffin Harmon, Jared Carlson, Jenny Grimes, Deborah Blue, Regina Brown, Sanford Williams, Pam Slipikoff, Marilyn Jones, Christy Schumann, Jordan Reith, and Rhonda Lean. We, the former chairs and I, we could not have done our jobs without all of you. So thank you so much for your support over the years. And you know, every committee that I chair going forward, I want a script. That's all I have to say. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, I don't see any hands online for member comments, but we do have 2 that came in by chat, and I don't want them to be lost, so I want to read those to you. They're both directed at Rosemary. One is from Beth O'Donnell, and she says, Oh, there it is. First one's from Beth O'Donnell. Rosemary, thank you, dear one, for all you did for Nancy and for being you. So, I think we probably have seconds for that. From Tracy Nayer. Brilliant and wonderful remarks, Rosemary. Thank you so much for sharing your journey and for giving context to the significance of this exceedingly helpful and impressive collective of people dedicated to solving the important and real problems of number exhaust. So with that, it looks like we are at the end of the member comments.
to you, Christy.
Yeah.
Is there anything from the commission that you would like to add?
Yes. Thank you, Rosemary, for your comments. We really appreciate all of that. You know, obviously, this is our last meeting, as we've discussed several times during the meeting today. I wanted to take this opportunity to make a few comments of my own. This is my 5th year as DFO of the NANC, and it has been a privilege to work with all of you over these years. I want to echo the thanks that have already been offered to the members, past and present, to Chairwoman Charles and Vice Chairwoman Alexander White, both of whom have been wonderful to work with, and to all of the co-chairs and working group members who produced many valuable reports and recommendations over the years. But primarily, I want to be sure that we recognize the work of the many staff members who have worked behind the scenes to ensure the NANC's success over many years. Over the 30-year history of the NANC, there have been far too many to name individually, but we appreciate the service of all of them. For now, I'd like to thank Rhonda Lynn, our Deputy DFO, who you all know, the working group liaisons and numbering managers for the current charter, the staff in the Commission's Office of Managing Director, including Deborah Klein, who recently retired, staff in the Office of General Counsel, who've worked very closely with us on membership and other issues related to the Federal Advisory Committee Act and its many, many requirements. And finally, the team here in the Commission meeting room who help us with the meetings, closed captioning, and our live streams. So I wanted to be sure that the staff were all aware that we very much appreciate all the work they do, even though many of you have no contact with them at all. They too deserve big thanks as we wrap up a long and successful run of the NANC. So thank you to everyone. As the chairwoman mentioned, we're going to try to do a photo. The AV staff is going to try to help us with that, hopefully with the equipment that can capture everyone. Sorry, I got a little tongue-tied. So if you can stick around, for those of you who are interested in being part of the photo, unfortunately for the online people, we won't be able to get their participation. But for the people who are here, if you can stick around for 5 or 10 minutes after the meeting, we'll try to gather everyone up and get a photo to memorialize this group. So with that, we don't have anything else on behalf of the staff, and I turn it back to the chair.
Thank you very much, Christy. Vice Chairwoman Alexander White, would you like to share a few words?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to say to everyone, it's been an honor to serve our industry as a NANC member and as vice chair. I've met and worked with some extraordinary people who have taught me a lot about our industry, Rosemary being one of them. And I have to point out to Phil. Phil has been a wealth of knowledge to me over the years. So Phil, thank you very much. And I've learned a lot from this group about our new IP world that's on the horizon. So thank you to the FCC for allowing me to serve on the NANC, and thank you very much to my fellow NANC members. Thank you all.
Thanks, Bridget. If there isn't anything else, I'd like to thank all of you for your time. The meeting is now adjourned.
Do we all sing Old Lang Syne or something?
Is now exiting.